Are you ready for the occult detective team up that you never knew you needed? Welcome to the depths. Welcome to Reading from the Depths. My name is Lecton. Thank you so much for joining me again. Today I have another review for you. This is a review of Strange Beasts by Susan J. Norris. It's being published in mid-October by Bindery Books, and I received a complimentary copy in exchange for an honest review. This story is a mashup of two mythical worlds that I didn't know I wanted to see together. So our two main characters, one is Samantha Harker. She is the daughter of Jonathan Harker, who killed Dracula, and she is teamed up with Helena Moriarty, who is the daughter of James Moriarty, who killed Sherlock Holmes. And the two of them work together at a society for subduing supernatural threats based out of London. And so it takes place in 20th century Europe, mostly in France, but it starts in London. And it's a world where the supernatural exists. Everyone acknowledges that it exists. And there is a society that sends out field agents to stop supernatural creatures from causing harm in the world. So already the world building is exciting because it's bringing together two fictional universes in a really exciting and interesting way. And the world itself isn't that wildly different than our own or than actual 20th century Europe, except once you add that one little wrinkle that everyone agrees supernatural beasts do exist, then that kind of changes everything. And it's done in a really subtle and beautiful way. So the world building is fun and interesting. And it just is this mashup. And the two of them fit together so well because they both live in the shadow of their parents and of their lineage. And one of them is trying to live up to their father's expectations. And the other one is trying to become free from the expectations of society because of who her father is. They work for this society of, magical police, so to speak. And Samantha has always been a researcher, not a field agent. But for some reason, at the beginning of this story, she's insistent she needs to go for this one case. And it's a case that'll bring her to France because there is some sort of mythical beast, potentially a werewolf, that has been killing all of these wealthy aristocrats. She requests to go on this case, to be brought out of the library, to go into the field. And her reasons for that are made clear shortly into the story. The case has already been assigned to Helena Moriarty, so she is able to team up with Helena. And you find out that no one wants to team up with Helena Moriarty. Her last three partners all ended up dead. And so she keeps to herself. So you have this real odd couple vibe. And it's a great story. The mystery is fun. It isn't wildly unexpected, but it does have some twists and turns that are fun to go on. And the real fun of this is you have these two female characters, and set in 20th century France. The thing about this world is that in this version of the world, supernatural beasts exist and everyone's fine with that. But the idea that a woman could be equal to a man is beyond the pale. So they are constantly trying to navigate this parochial and this patriarchal system. There's this blatant misogyny everywhere, even though the two of them are incredibly smart, incredibly gifted, and incredibly skilled in what they do. They are undercut and second-guessed all along the way by everyone they meet, whether it be their own superiors at the society or the police or other people they meet while they are investigating this case. And so because of that, because of their positioning as underprivileged or oppressed members of the public, that for them to be engaging in this type of detective work is really exciting, and it gives a different lens or a different focus on how they perceive what's going on. So you get these questions about what does it mean to be monstrous? Who are the real monsters here? And what does it mean to fight for justice? Especially when there are these big class divides and all of the people that are being killed are these high aristocrats. What does it mean if someone is actually seeking justice against them for crimes they've committed against the lower class? Now, that may or may not be the case, but it's definitely something that they think about. And they say, what does it mean? What is the difference between revenge and justice? And why is violence acceptable at a social level depending on who the victim is? And so these are things that this novel is, contending with. And it does it in sometimes a little heavy-handed way, but it never feels inappropriate because these two women are, at the top of their game, yet constantly second-guessed. Because of that, it feels natural to be asking these questions. It never feels like you're being preached at. Instead, it feels like these are the natural questions that we should be asking about justice, about policing, about roles in society, about social expectations, about privilege, about class. And it just is really refreshing in that way. And it's all tied up with these, horrific monster attacks that they are constantly trying to stop. But in very Sherlockian fashion, they have clues they have to unravel, and there are ciphers, and there are all these hidden messages that they have to try to decode. So it's this balance of hunting mythical beasts and also using this kind of reductive reasoning to solve the case. So I think the balance between mystery and the supernatural is really fun. I think the detective work is interesting and refreshing. I think the twists and turns of the story, while not entirely unexpected, were still refreshing and they were fun to hear. I think to see what it means to navigate the inheritance of your family, what it means to be in the shadow of your family for better or for worse, and how that affects who you are as a person, how you trust, how you love, how you are able to find yourself in the world and make a name for yourself, I think are interesting questions to ask. I think the question of what does it mean to be a monster and who is truly monstrous, what's the difference between justice and revenge, these are all explored in this really fun way. And don't get it wrong, this isn't a preachy story. This is a detective story. This is an adventure, But these all are like the secondary things that are feeding that adventure, which is what makes it so much fun. You see in these two characters, Helena, and Samantha, Sam, one of them desperately wanting to fix the system. She has this righteous indignation that the system is broken, that it treats women poorly, that it treats the oppressed poorly, and she wants to fix it. That's Samantha, right? And then Helena, who has constantly been on the outside, agrees the system is broken, but says there's no point fixing it. It's not possible to fix it. Instead, you have to go outside of the system. You have to ignore the rules of the oppressor because you can never use the tools of the oppressor to dismantle the oppressor's house. So they have these two different approaches, and approaches are both informed by their own personal experiences, the traumas they've experienced, how others treat them. And so trying to find the middle ground between the two of them to decide how to go about successfully doing the work they want to do and do what's right in the face of what is expected of them, I think is like the real interesting part of this journey. It's not just figuring out who the bad guy is and capturing the mythical beasts and preventing them from doing harm. It's this inner journey that is reflected in the struggles they face trying to do the outer journey. So in many ways, that's typical for lots of like YA literature and fantasy literature in general. You go on an external journey in order to go on an internal journey. So that is paralleled here, but it's done in a really beautiful way, even though the like plot beats of the story don't feel wildly inventive. It still feels fresh and exciting and new due to the nature of these two characters coming together, these two different literary worlds coming together and giving us these exciting feminist exploration of what it means to be a detective and what it means to do battle with the other, whatever that might mean, whether it's the supernatural other or the internal other. So I don't know if I have a lot more to say on this, except that I think it's a fun occult detective story. I think, especially by the end, it leans a little more on the Sherlock Holmes side than it does on the Dracula side, if those are the two worlds that are being combined. Though we do have all these mythical beasts that have to be conquered, but it is a mystery, right? It is not a horror. There aren't like, there are some horrific scenes, but there aren't jump scares. There isn't this like sense of gloom and foreboding. So in that regard, it's a little more Sherlock Holmes than it is Dracula, but it is a really interesting melding of the two. And I love the idea that you're bringing the two together, not with their main characters, but with their children. You also see Jacob Van Helsing, who is like the dude bro, who also works for the same society. But he is, like the frat guy you don't want to spend time with, who is convinced he knows more than everyone. And he pops in and out of the story for different reasons. So the idea of taking the children of these great literary worlds and putting them together in one mashup, I thought was just a lot of fun. It was a great story. The mystery was fun. The action, when there was action, was exciting. It was tense. Once I started reading, I didn't want to put it down. I read it in a day and a half or so. The writing was really strong. It was a close third person the whole time, and we followed Sam. In future books, it would be nice to be able to follow other characters, but part of this story was Sam and Helena learning about each other and learning what it means to keep secrets from each other and learning what it means to be honest with each other. And so if you had both of their perspectives, it would have spoiled some of the mystery in this story. But now, as the story progresses and the world opens up, it would be nice to move back and forth between different perspectives. So we'll see if that happens. But the writing itself was strong. It was compelling. It pulled you in. It was comfortable. They were set in France, and every once in a while, there were just lines of dialogue spoken in French. And sometimes it was translated, sometimes it wasn't. And I like that, especially because Samantha doesn't know French. And so when there are lines of French that aren't translated, you're put in the same position as the character, not knowing what it means necessarily. And so I thought that was really effectively done. The writing, every once in a while, just had a little bit of a flourish on it, but it wasn't poetic, it wasn't lyrical. It was like really solid genre writing, if that makes sense. The narrative was straightforward, it didn't jump around, but it was compelling and exciting the whole time. You're never bored reading it. And even though you can kind of suspect like who are the main suspects and what the overall, let's say, resolution to the story might be, even though you can suspect that as it comes, because she does a good job of setting the seeds so it doesn't come out of nowhere. But if you're familiar with detective stories and with mysteries, then you can kind of make well-educated guesses throughout the story. Even with that being the case, it's still fun to have these revelations as the story goes on. Nothing is taken away from the story by you being able to guess correctly what might happen. And there are a few little twists that are added throughout the story that, don't fundamentally change things, but just add a little bit, different color gradation to it, let's say. Just a little bit different perspective that was really exciting and refreshing. So I enjoyed this story a lot. I thought this kind of feminist mashup of Dracula and Sherlock Holmes was something I did not know I needed in my life, but now that I have it, I'm very glad I found it, and I look forward to being able to read more stories in this world, in this universe with these characters. What about you? Do you have any interest in this mashup? Have you had a chance to read this, or are you looking forward to reading it? I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. But for now, thank you for spending time with me today. I appreciate you. Be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.